Today's show is sponsored by the Franklin Street Market. If you love knowing what's up and coming in the Pittsburgh food scene, you've got to check out the spring edition of the Franklin Street Market on the north side. It's an evening food market featuring emerging Pittsburgh food producers, and it's your opportunity to discover emerging food brands, pick up fresh flowers and art, and enjoy a lush Pittsburgh spring evening with a local beverage in hand. They're coming up on Thursdays. That's April 24th, May 29th, and June 26th, all from 4 to 8 p.m. at 1243 North Franklin Street. So come experience the food businesses that are blossoming in Pittsburgh at the Franklin Street Market. Learn more at franklinstreetmarketpgh.com. This episode is supported by Liberty Magic and its upcoming show, Malin Nilsson in Magic Unplugged. Magic is part of Malin's blood. She is a third-generation magician who's showcasing her skills as part of a laugh-out-loud and very theatrical performance. You'll experience handmade magic tricks, surrealism, and comedy, topped with raw onions and a pinch of confetti. If you want to see how raw onions fit into magic, well, you're just going to have to come catch the show for yourself. Malin Nilsson in Magic Unplugged is running now through May 4th at Liberty Magic, Pittsburgh's premier speakeasy that is all about the sleight of hand and elevating the art of magic. And if you're really adventurous, you should snag Skeleton VIP tickets. It gets you front row access and an exclusive meet and greet after the show. Get your tickets at trustarts.org/magic before they disappear. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, we are kicking off a new month-long series, Mayoral Mondays. We're asking each of the four men vying to lead the city to make their pitch. Tell us why you think you are the best person to be leading Pittsburgh right now. We're starting off with the current mayor, Ed Gainey, who says he wants 4 more years. He's notably the only challenger to ever beat out an incumbent mayor. And before that, he served in the State House for almost a decade. It's Monday, April 14th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for having us here in your headquarters in Point Breeze.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all coming out.
Yeah. How would you describe the city right now, maybe its biggest challenge in this moment?
I think the biggest challenge that we have, one is I would describe the city in a good space. I think when you look at some of the accomplishments that we have, one is the reduction in crime, particularly homicides, going from 71 to 42 or 33%. Reduction in homicide, 45% reduction in gun violence. I think the amount of housing that we really talked about doing is starting to pay off. The $600 million we got from the state, working with Governor Shapiro.
That's for downtown and a lot of projects.
And County Exec Sarah Anna Murado, the 7 conversion projects that we have underway. You know, when we came in, we didn't have the city didn't have a plan for housing. To get the $30 million affordable housing bond, I think, was major. I think $37 million of our federal money went from preservation and also construction of affordable units. And when you think about the 12 low-income tax credit deals we got from the state and 2 funding rounds, it just demonstrated that we were laser focused on making sure that we would provide enough housing for everybody to be able to live, particularly affordability. When I came in, we hadn't moved the property out of the land bank as of yet. Now we've moved over 160 other parcels out of the land bank and getting them back on the tax rolls. The other one is our own PGH, where we took low-income renters and made them homeowners. All that is our value statement about making this a safe, welcoming, and thriving community, city. And I think we've done a great job of that.
What would you say is your biggest challenge, at least headed into the next 4 years, should you be successful?
You know, I think our greatest challenge is still housing. Continuing to ensure that we get our zoning package passed. I believe inclusionary zoning is a tool that we have to have. And the reason why I'm so focused on inclusionary zoning is that I believe that in every housing development, when we have more than 20 units, that we should have affordability in them. I don't believe that asking for 10% at 50% of the area median income is wrong. That's what, $45,000 for a mother of two to be able to live in this new housing. This new housing development. I see that as a wonderful gift. I believe we should have it all over the city, because at the end of the day, we should never have wealthy people living over here and working class people living over here. We should never have housing segregation. It should always be housing integration. So to me, that is the biggest challenge, because there's a group of developers that don't want that. But we are laser focused on making sure that we continue on our premise that housing is a human right, and we want to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to have affordable housing.
And the Pittsburgh Planning Commission has approved your inclusionary zoning plan. Of course, it still has to make it through City Council, and they have said that they're probably not going to touch that until after the primary. Is there anything about the plan as it exists right now that you'd change or tweak?
No, I think it's a great plan. I think that given all that we have in there, from accessory dwelling units to lot size reform to parking minimum reforms to transit-oriented development, I believe all that is good for growth in the city of Pittsburgh. So I think the whole zoning package is good. I wouldn't change anything. Again, we'll talk to City Council. We'll continue to negotiate. But I believe that there's no reason why developments of 20 units or more that wants us to fill their gap in order for them to be able to complete their project should not have affordability in it. There's no reason why 10% that's not a big number.
I mean, the criticism is that, there's not enough of an incentive to get developers to do it, or people might bounce before they even try to get it done. What do you say to that?
I looked at our building permits, and they're higher than ever before, even if you look at Lawrenceville and Bloomfield. So it hasn't stopped people from building units. And then secondly is they do have the options. We have the Project Section 8 that we've talked to them about that they can utilize as well. So it's not like we don't have tools that they can use in order to fill the gap. The key is they just don't want to do it. And they've been clear with that. They feel that the market rate is the way to go because it maximizes their dollar. But my job is not to maximize their dollar. My job is to repopulate and grow the city. And so at the end of the day, we can't continue. Look, we built for 8 years straight, we built market rate units. And we lost a great deal of our population out this city. 3,000 low-income workers and 700 black homeowners. And that's not talking about the rest of the people that we lost to the city. The county had a population increase due to the gentrification of neighborhoods in the city, and we had a population decrease due to it. So it demonstrates that if we just build, market rate, they'll come. That's wrong. That's already been tried, and it didn't pass. What we know that works if you want to stabilize neighborhood is that people are looking for affordability. Even young professionals that's just getting out of college, they're not trying to pay $1,500 for a one-bedroom. I'm not paying $1,500 for a one-bedroom. So I can understand why they live on the outskirts of the city, because the rent is cheaper. So when they say that at the end of the day, just build it and they would come, I just gave you 2 examples of they haven't come. So 8 years we lost population. And even when you talk to young professionals just graduate, they're going to go to where they feel that they can afford to rent. And I want that to be in our city. I believe that we can stabilize our city through affordability, and we'll stay laser focused on it.
Yeah, so that's inclusionary zoning. But you talk a lot about affordable housing and getting units online. And just the last couple of weeks, I've heard a lot of folks in your office talk about the number of units created. But Mr. Mayor, the numbers have been on a spectrum. Sometimes it's been 1,400, sometimes as much as 2,000. I'm wondering if you know what the actual figure is.
We know it's definitely 1,400 and more growing. I don't have the actual number. It's close to 2,000 when you add the ones that's in the pipeline right now.
How do you count them? Like, what's the source for that?
Urban Redevelopment Authority keeps numbers on them, so they can show you. Actually, we just come out with a chart, and the chart can identify exactly how that goes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about growth. You were talking about the city population going down, but it did go up just a little bit by census estimates this year. And actually, the thing I was most intrigued by, Mr. Mayor, is that the growth is attributed largely to immigrants coming into our community. What do you think can be done over the next 4 years to grow Pittsburgh and bring more people into the region?
I think you hit on the 2 right away. I think 1 is housing. I think people will always come where you have affordable housing. I mean, that's been proven. And 2 is our ability to be able to continue to attract immigrants. Yesterday, I just had a naturalization ceremony for immigrants. Had to be about between 40 and 50 that we did it for. I think that we have to continue to reach out and make sure that we're creating a situation where our narrative is that we want immigrants. And that's why I was so laser focused to stand up to ICE and let them know that our city would not be participating with ICE unless it was a criminal warrant. Somebody was a homicide or something. Other than that, I see where ICE does more trauma than it does create public safety.
Are you concerned at all about that number, that 300,000 threshold? You know, what is staying at 300,000 as a city population? What does it signal for you?
Status quo. That doesn't demonstrate any growth. I believe that we have to grow. And I believe that at the end of the day, we don't want to go under that 300,000 at all. We're closer to a third-class city, and I don't want that because we lose state and federal dollars. So for me, it's all about how we continue to grow, and that's why I've been laser focused again on housing. And I agree with what you say. We have to continue to become attractive to immigrants.
I mean, do you think there's something more that you could be doing to convince people who already live and work here to stay?
I think we can always do better. I think that we can do a better job of reaching out to our universities and talking about why this is such a great city to live in. I believe the NFL draft will give us a great opportunity to attract a lot of different people here.
I mean, they'll be here for like a week. Do you think that week will be enough to convince people to move here?
Absolutely. I think it'll convince some people to move here.
What fraction of the 750,000 who might come into the city?
I said a million.
Is a million what you're going for?
I'm going with $1 million, but
okay.
I'm not sure. Listen, I'm not sure the exactly one, but it's a great opportunity for us to be able to highlight and market our city, particularly the people whose granddaddies may have went here and grandmas lived here but don't live here anymore. But we have the type of universities that can attract them here. I believe it's a great marketing tool all around, not only for people to just come live here, but also for investment to invest here. We have to be able to use this not just as a day of the NFL draft, but it has to be a day that we promote our city at a global level.
Do you think that we can grow on the level that you're talking about without a robust public transit system?
We need a robust public transit system. We need a robust public transit system. There's no question about that. We need one desperately. That's why I'm working with County Executive Anna Morado, our state delegation, to talk about exactly what we have to do to make sure that mass transit is funded. I believe that we will get mass transit funded. I can't imagine Philly and Pittsburgh being without mass transit or the severe cuts that will come because there's not no state money up there.
You and the county executive were in the House. Like you know these people.
I was in there with Act 89.
I mean, Act 89 being the bill that funded mass transit in Pennsylvania for 10 years.
It was.
You had a long tenure in the House before you became Pittsburgh's mayor. You know these players. What is it going to take to convince them? Because right now, I got to be honest, Mr. Mayor, from my perspective, it seems like our lawmakers are being pretty quiet about this right now.
That means the deal's getting done.
Is that Pittsburgh's way?
That's the state way. That's the state way.
You just do it behind closed doors. You're quiet because like Philly's holding rallies and like they're being loud.
Are you talking about the advocates or the lawmakers?
Largely advocates, but there was a state senator that's been involved in Philly.
Yeah, so let me say this. One, there's two. Let's start at the state. When you're starting to hear things quiet down at the state, it usually means that there's a lot of conversations happen between the four caucuses. So I know that for a fact. So I know there's conversations going on. Matter of fact, I can guarantee you there's conversations going on right here. That's number one. Number two, I just left the meeting the other day with PPT, Pittsburgh for Public Transit, and they were speaking about exactly having rallies in Harrisburg. They were talking about the things that needs to happen to ensure that the voice from the West, because I agree, we do have to have a voice, that the voice from the West will be heard in Harrisburg to be able to talk about our mass transit and why it's important. So I think it's moving in that direction. I think Philadelphia, you brought up Philadelphia, first class city. They may have had some rallies, but it's not that I think we're being quiet. I think that, as always, when I was a state representative, and we were dealing with, even when we were dealing with Act 89, it was quiet for a minute, but then it started to ramp up. So I have every thought in me that our advocate organizations will start fighting for mass transit. We can't be without mass transit. And then the other part of that, to be quite frank, as we talk about growth, if you look at the southeast part of the state and you look at SEPTA, the way that SEPTA runs through the whole southeast, we also have to start talking about how through transportation we connect southwest. There's no question about that. We need the same robust transportation that they have out east right here in Southwest. Is that a longer conversation? Yeah, but if you're asking me about future growth in a way that says that we know the power of transportation to connect municipalities in other areas, we've seen it in Southeast, we also need that here in Southwest.
So while PRT is, it's doomsday over there right now, we're talking about changing a huge portion of our transit system and sunsetting a lot of it. If the money doesn't come through, you're saying we actually need to grow the thing?
I believe that the money will come. I believe we definitely need to grow. If we don't grow, then that would be the status quo that I'm talking about. And if we're going to remain status quo, then we're not thinking about how we grow for the future. And I think that's extremely important, that we always put growth at top of the equation. At least that's what I do. That's why you hear me talk about housing and agreeing with you with immigration. That's the way that you grow. That's what we have to attract, and that's what we have to establish. The more that we have of that, the more the city is going to grow. I believe we have the right assets in the city to do it. I believe we have world-class universities and colleges. I believe that, the technology industry that has blossomed here is also another way of doing it. I think that at the end of the day, when we really think about it, again, I'll go back to our tourism and making sure that our tourism is strong, whether that's Picklesburg, whether that's Juneteenth, whether that's the NFL draft coming here. When people come here, they talk about the love that they have for this city, how friendly it is. I think we have a lot of attributes that we can attract people to this region.
I mean, well, with growth and, making something bigger, more robust, often that means spending a little bit of money. How would you describe Pittsburgh's financial position right now?
I think it's great. I mean, when you think about what we've done, we were first to create not the first, but we created a new financial task force where we had City Controller Heisler. We had City County Erica Strasburger, and we had the president of City Council, Daniel Lavelle, in my office meeting every other week or every week to discuss the financial conditions of the city. We ended with a $4 million surplus, and we also had our bond rating move from AA minus to AA. So from an investment standpoint, not from a political one, when the bond agencies give you the ability to increase your bond rating, I think that speaks volumes. Now, does that mean that we're out of the woods because of some of the things that we can't control, or some of the things, or the too skinny years that we're coming into? Of course, that's always challenging, but we've always been transparent of where we're at and where we're going, and I think that's just as important as well.
I feel like you talk about that bond rating a lot, Mr. Mayor, but it usually only comes into play when you want to borrow money on behalf of the city. Do you have that in the back of your mind, something that you might want to invest in at some point if there's a next term?
Well, the reason why I talk so much about the bond rating is because we should be proud of that. It gives us borrowing power. Other people would have talked about it if it went the other way. But we've been very good, and it also talks about our fiscal management and the way that we made sure that we was hand on taxpayer dollars. So, when I talk about the bond rating, we should talk about that. That's a positive. That is something that's good for the city. And in regards to, do we have any further investment? I'm sure that we will, but that's something that we will talk about as a team in regards to which direction to go with that. But right now, we are proud that we were able to, particularly coming out of COVID, a lot of cities coming out of COVID didn't even make it that far. So for us to be able to say that we ended the year with a $4 million surplus and that our bond rating improved, coming out one of the worst health conditions that we've experienced in some time, that's something that the city should be proud of.
We have a little surplus, but we're also still counting on that jock tax. And of course, as we're recording this, oral arguments just started in that case with the city. We're waiting on that. And we expect our overtime bill to come due with some of our officers, in particular police, that are probably going to get scheduled more than we're counting on. So we'll keep an asterisk on that.
Yeah, we have to keep an asterisk on that. But we also got to look at what we have right now. I think that's critical. And I think the second thing, even with police, we went 2 years before I got elected of not hiring any police officers. We put on
some of that was because of the pandemic and the moratorium that was put during that.
But it didn't have to be 2 years. It didn't have to be 2 years. Let's be honest. Now, it didn't have to be 2 years.
But you have said that even though we were authorized for 900 officers, you thought that
we couldn't get there. We couldn't get to 9.
You thought that we don't need that. Like, we can have a lower number.
I think that but if we can get by 850, we're good. We're good at 850.
We're not even close to 850 right now. Right. We have around 600 officers answering roll call right now.
But that's what I meant about the 2 years, right? So let's think about that. Even in the 2 years, and I can understand why we could use different excuses for why we didn't do it. The reality is, what's the excuse that we didn't think about the number of police officers that were retired? we never took that into consideration. So the number of police officers that retire, and we didn't recruit now for 2 years, and there was times that we could have recruited, we didn't recruit. And the fact that we didn't do it and we didn't account for the ones that was going to retire, that's a problem.
And what would you do? What would your approach be to improving recruiting?
Or
retention, because that's the other issue.
Yeah, so let's talk about both. Let's talk about recruiting first. When we came in, we got the academy open. We put on 4 or 5 classes. The last class being the biggest one that we had so far, and that still only came down to 40 officers. The other thing we did is we hired a recruiting officer just to deal with strictly recruiting. We created a recruiting video to be able to send around to different universities, schools, and other areas where we may be able to get people that's interested in a career in law enforcement to come to the city. So we're doing the type of things to be able to be stronger when it comes to recruiting. Retention is our ability. I can't go into that right now. A lot of that'll happen through CBA.
Talking about the collective bargaining agreement.
Absolutely. So, I don't want to get too much into that, but what I will say is that we understand the need to be able to retain our officers.
It's something you take seriously.
Something that we take very seriously.
A big thing hanging over the head of the department right now, the Bureau of Police, is not having a chief or having 5 chiefs during your tenure alone. A lot of what you just said, the opportunities that you've had over the last couple of years happened while Chief Larry Scarato was in office. He's no longer here.
Good guy.
Do you regret anything about how that shook out at the end?
Do I regret Chief Scarato or how it shook out?
How it shook out.
I don't regret Chief Scarato.
I know you don't.
I don't. I think that, in regards to, and I can't tell you why, I don't know, so let me be clear. He could have, in my eyes, been a little bit more forthright coming and just saying, hey, look, my partner's virtual job was eliminated and he's going back to Texas and I'm going with him. That's something that I could understand. I mean, as a married person, I get that. So if there's any regrets that I may have, it's just that for whatever reason, he didn't feel he could say that. In regards to Ragland, I thought Ragland, he was the chief architect behind a lot of the plans on the south side, downtown, and the north side. So, as much as Larry was executing, the Chief Ragland was the one that was actually putting the strategies together. So to move Chief Ragland up to be chief, if he didn't go through the things that he went through with a couple people on council, he would have been the chief. I think it poisoned him in regards to how he's seen actually having to deal with the political side of being chief of police. That's unfortunate, but that's a reality. So, but at the end of the day, also want to make sure that we focus on when I'm out in these communities. To be honest, they want to know. They really don't ask me too much about the police, the chief of police. What they ask me is about homicides. What they ask me is about guns, because in our community, a lot of that revolves around life and death. So those are the questions that I get asked the most.
But some of that poison, I think, does go both ways, in that council has talked a lot about, feeling a sense of mistrust. And if you're going to get a new chief, the political reality, I see your face, the political reality is that you do have to get it through them.
Definitely. And we had the votes for Ragland. We had the votes.
Definitely had the votes. You may have had the votes, but the system changed because of what happened with Scarato, that you may or may not have made a deal with him. You're rolling your eyes, Mr. Mayor.
There was no deal made with me and Chief Scarato. Chief asked me if he could referee, and I said no. I said, no, my only concern is getting homicides down. And it's funny because the same people that we're talking about that made a big deal with that are the same people that wanted Ragland to do something and he felt that was unethical. So it's funny how they could say this happened and it didn't happen, but at the end of the day, turn around and do things to make a chief feel that it's unethical. And I'll leave that right there.
What will you be looking for in the next police chief?
The same things I looked for with Scarato, with Chief Scarato. I want someone that, understands how to pick up the morale of the police officers. That's number one. Number two, I want somebody that understands that, deployment is extremely important, and community policing is number one in my book. I think that the community policing is the reason why we was able to make so many arrests. It's the reason why we've had a decrease in homicides. It's the reason why we got so many tips about what was going on when it came to homicides in the city. So I think just continue to build a relationship with neighborhood and community leaders is extremely important. And those are the things that I'll be looking for in the next police chief, because those are the things that 21st century policing make a difference. How do we connect the chief more into the fabric of the community so that young people see a difference when it comes to the image of policing? I think that's critical, because in the areas where we've had the most homicides is also areas where we've had the most underserved communities. We stopped over-policing in Black and brown communities. So, the whole theory that if the more you police in Black and brown communities, the less crime you have is a false narrative. Because what we've proven is that when we build relationship in those communities and not over-police in those communities, that builds trust, because there's nothing more important than relationship capital. The more relationship you have in these neighborhoods, the more capital you get to have the truth.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast. We've all set health goals: lose weight, exercise more, eat better. But without a plan, those goals often fade. That may have happened to you. It has definitely happened to me. And that's where Prolon comes in. Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet gives you a science-backed, structured approach to stay on track and see real results. And now Prolon is upping their game with the new next-gen 5-day program, delivering the same science-backed benefits in a cleaner, more convenient, and more flavorful format. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. Next Gen builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and ready-to-eat meals. Developed over decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by top U.S. medical centers, Prolon has been shown to support biological age reduction, metabolic health, skin appearance, fat loss, and energy. I've been doing the 5-day program, and I feel so much better. I really enjoy the tasty energy bars, the snacks and soups, and the fact that I can enjoy meals, even though the calorie count is super low. The flavors and textures are excellent. An olive oil snack here, broccoli and quinoa soup there, hibiscus tea, a yummy nut bar. It's got the benefits of a 5-day fast, but doesn't have the challenge of doing it with pure liquids. It's a system reset. And also, I know this sounds funny, but it's not. The packaging and directions are fantastic, clear, and well-organized and thoughtful. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolon is offering CityCast listeners 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/city. That's PROLONLIFE.com/city to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/city.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Let's talk a little bit more about, the skinny years you said we might have coming up. County Executive Sarah Innamorato had a tax battle last year. She won a small increase. Can you imagine at some point in the next few years a tax increase being on the table for Pittsburgh?
We keep all our tools on the table, but right now it would be premature for me to discuss that or have a conversation about whether we would need to do that. What we want to do is continue to be fiscally sound when we talk about managing the city's finances.
How close on the table? Like the tools are spread out. Are we talking right within grasp, or is it somewhere over there on the shelf?
Well, I don't know. There are some variables that you spoke about that we still have to determine what that looks like.
Is what's happened at the federal level affecting that decision at all for you?
everything that's happening at the federal level is impacting our city. From the quality of health to business. I was just on the phone with a gentleman a couple days ago, and we were talking about the tariffs because he was saying that how his product comes from the Eastern European Union, the countries over there, to come here, and that this tariff is going to have a tremendous impact on his business and the relationships that he have over there. So if we're talking about from a small business, even with the tariffs, it's going to have an impact on small business in the city. If you're talking about ICE, we already know the threat of ICE and how ICE has impacted our immigrant community. If you're talking about DEI, we know the impact that DEI had in terms of a dog whistle to talk about that everybody that looks like me that went through qualifications, was trained for positions, only got it because of DEI. If you talk about the Custer HUD, then you're talking about rolling back anti-discrimination policies that protect people. That's why we did an executive order letting people know that if you want to do business with the city, you got to adhere to our anti-discrimination laws.
Which are enforced in no small part by the Commission on Human Relations.
Correct.
If you listen to the show on a regular basis,
Correct.
you heard us talk about that and the protections and
was a
enforcement
nice
that
one
are
right
available
there. That
to
was a
you.
nice little,
Look, we try. We try.
Right?
We
Nice
try to make
marketing.
sure, because it's something that's serviceable for people who live in the city or work in the city, and we want to make sure people know it's available.
I said there's three of y'all that give me good interviews that y'all ask great questions. So I mean, let's talk about it. It's definitely gonna have an impact. I mean, I can't sit there and not. I mean, even veterans and the fact that they're talking about cutting more programs from the veterans, that's an impact to this region, particularly with the number of veterans we got here.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about closing down Social Security building in East Liberty. We know how many people use the Social Security building in East Liberty. It's a whole lot. You ain't talking about just the East Liberty or Lincoln, Limington, Lumber, Belmore, Homewood community. You're talking about Wilkinsburg, Braddock, Swissville, Rankin. You're talking about a whole eastern region, the east side region that uses it. So absolutely, whatever goes on DC is going to have an impact here. That's why one of the things that we did was make sure the grants that we got expedited out of DC so we wouldn't have to get our grant money caught up in this federal problem.
Mr. Mayor, who did you vote for in the most recent presidential election?
Kamala Harris.
I'm not surprised. You did campaign on her behalf, but it is something we're going to ask everybody who's running for mayor. How would you describe what you have done to help Pittsburghers weather some of these federal policy changes? And I'm curious what steps you'd like to take, what more you think you can do if you're successful in May.
One is that when this first started going on, we met with all our organizations around immigration because we knew that ICE would be one of the first, threats to American democracy in my eyes. So we met with a lot of our nonprofit organizations to talk about how we could help. We funded one-day lawyers so that people that was going through things would have a lawyer to be able to talk to or be able to go to court with. We also partner with our LGBTQIA community to talk about what we can do to protect their interests as well, because at the end of the day, we knew that some of the policies that was in place, the president would go after, President Trump would go after, and appointed President Musk would go after. It's the
Nice
truth.
slip in there.
No. Well, it's the truth. Let's be honest. It's the truth. You got an elected president and you got an elected president that appointed a president. And that's just the reality. We can look at it any way. All right, let's look at it this way. He's the elected president and Musk is the CEO. At the end of the day, you got two people running the nation. And so when you think about it from that perspective, even with DEI, just making sure that people understood that, your color don't make you a DEI, your qualifications and who you are as a person makes you qualified to have a job. And so that, those are the things that as we go forward, we will continue to work with our advocates to ensure that we're doing what's right. And that's something that's extremely important.
What power does a mayor of a major city have to do those things?
I think he has a lot of power. For one, you got to stand up. The greatest power we have as a people is standing up and saying that we're not going to take this. That's the greatest power that a mayor has. The greatest power is to use the laws that he has at his disposal to be able to protect his people.
Mr. Mayor, you did just tell me that you wanted to be quiet for PRT, but now you're telling me you're going to be loud for DC.
No, I didn't say I was going to be quiet for PRT. What I said, we was going up to the state. We were going to talk to our state delegation, that we will work with our advocate community. The day that they have their advocacy up there, I will be up there at the state. So I don't know what it means to be quiet. I don't know what it means to be quiet, but I think that, as we
it's a different strategy for a different situation.
No, I think the difference is, for me, what I've learned in politics is only talk when you're prepared. I've seen too many elected officials talk unprepared, and then they got to flip-flop back and forth on what position they hold. I've never been that. I've never wavered. I've always told you, if I'm not prepared to answer a question, I say I'm not prepared right now.
I can confirm that's true.
Yeah.
And you and the folks at the mayor's office are very clear when you're ready to talk and when you're not.
Correct, because when you've been in this business for a while, I'm not going to be on camera saying one thing and then the mall for 24 hours later saying something different. That means I didn't do my homework. I didn't study. All I did was try to get to answer the media without even doing the background check to make sure that what I'm answering is correct. I don't believe in giving you that. I believe that you're going to come and ask me questions that I better know, and I need to be upfront if that's something that we haven't come up with a solution for yet. I think that transparency is good. And the one thing you can say is whenever I did come to you, I've always been prepared to answer the questions. And if I don't have it the first time, I'm definitely going to have it the next time.
Well, I appreciate that. We try to always follow up with you, Mr. Mayor. I guess if we zoom out a little bit and we look at Pittsburgh's position in the nation and, the companies that are here, the folks that you represent, if no one helps, if no one steps up to do anything for Pittsburgh, if the federal government continues this kind of whiplash situation where things change on the daily basis.
Say on a daily basis?
On a daily basis. And we don't even pass any tax increases. Is Pittsburgh going to be okay? Like, what's our outlook right now trying to weather this?
This city's always been resilient. This city has always been a city of fighters. And it's difficult to say exactly what if this happens, this is what's going to happen, if it's a small word with a big meaning. So I'd be very careful of saying if this happens, this got to happen. What I believe we have to do is continue to prepare for the growth of the city. And I believe that there are some tools that we have at our disposal. And I'm going to go back to what I talked about for our ability to build more affordable housing. I think that's critical because people will always come where they find the real estate acceptable to what they can afford. And so we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're building that type of real estate. I think the second thing that we've done a good job at is making the city more welcoming, making people feel more welcome here. For a long time, you could. I don't have to argue. I could tell you that this wasn't a city for everybody. This was a city where people felt discrimination, they felt segregation and racism. And that's the
constant criticism. You hear Pittsburgh win awards for being the most livable city, but livable for who?
Exactly. Livable for who? It wasn't livable when you don't have a middle class African-American neighborhood or a Latino neighborhood. It's not livable. It's not livable when you have a report saying this is the worst place for black women in this city. And I think that if you look at my administration and the amount of African-American women that we have in leadership position, it's just not true. It's just the ability for them to have the opportunity. I think when you talk about Chief Gilchrist, who is now chief of EMS, she's done an incredible job in acting in Freedom House Academy, bringing more people into EMS through that. I think when you talk about, Yasmin Shaheed, that is the executive assistant in my office, she's done a phenomenal job. Felicity Williams, who's done a wonderful job with MBE, WBE. Pam Collier, my special assistant, getting back to people and making sure that we're moving effectively. Lori Criswell, who's done a phenomenal job. Michelle King, that's dealing with the immigration situation, has done a phenomenal job. Lisa Frank's done a phenomenal job. So when we talk about whether women overall or African-American women, we have a record of being able to demonstrate that if given an opportunity, they can succeed.
What's your approach to convincing some of our local nonprofits and universities to contributing to city coffers?
Well, I believe they should. I believe that they should want to enter into a pilot program. I believe that everybody should pay their fair share. Everybody should pay their fair share. That's my belief.
I mean, in October, you told us that you were almost there, that it was going to happen.
We were supposed to have a nice meeting. We thought we would have a nice meeting. We were optimistic about the meeting.
What went wrong?
UPMC pulled out.
I mean, 3 years ago, you campaigned on that very thing. I'm going to get UPMC to do this. And in the last few weeks, you have been criticizing them pretty heavily because they've stopped offering gender-affirming care to minors because of an executive order, which is not a law.
Right. They don't have to follow their catering. I
mean, that's got to be a complicated relationship to navigate right now. What's your strategy in this moment?
So two things. One is we've always had an open door policy that we would sit down and talk about it. I think the other three are on board, but nobody wants to do it.
CMU, Pitt, and Highmark, Allegheny Health.
They would be willing to sit at the table and work out a deal. Highmark has been, very, very vocal about that. They would be willing, but they want everybody at the table. And so it's my belief that, everybody should be at the table. 37% of our property is tax exempt. There's no reason why, as you talked about before, if we talk about the growth of this region, we need our nonprofits to be able to pay into it. There's no reason why we got to rely on our teachers or nurses or firefighters or police. It shouldn't have to be like that. It should be that everybody's willing to pay their fair share. And we have always, we have always opened the door and just put the olive branch out for UPMC to come to the table. I understand that, when we talk about tense times, it don't have to be tense. It just takes the will to be able to come to a table and get a deal done for the city of Pittsburgh. And our values are their values. Their values are our values. If you're the healthcare to care, I understand that we should care for everybody. You use our bridges, you use our parks, you use our police, you use our ambulance, you use our fire, and so at the end of the day, we have a lot in common that connects us, and our values are there. So we should be able to ensure that our nonprofits pay their fair share.
I mean, Pittsburgh's been having this conversation
forever.
Since 1997 at least, because that's when we passed a state law that, sort of benefited nonprofit status in this way. Both of your predecessors, I believe, filed lawsuits about this. You had said, I think, to the Confluence a few years back that you wouldn't rule one out either. What's the status of that right now?
Well, that's why we're going through the property assessment appeal right now. I mean, our whole situation is to have all their properties looked at, but there has been...
But that's so slow, and the success rate is low at this point.
One, let's go with the reason why it's slow. Whenever you're going through this type of a process, even if you're going to court, I've never seen a quick result. And
I know.
There's always been situations that at the end of the day, we have to use the tools that we have at our disposal. This is not something, if this was something that was easy to do, it would already be done.
Is there a benefit to taking stock on all their properties, even if you're not successful in the court challenge?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, what we're looking for is that one property. If we get one of their properties to the property appeals that says that this right here is a commercial property and they're making money off of it, this is an opportunity for us to get us into common pleas court, and then we get the ability to talk about the rest of their properties as well.
So are you still imagining that a lawsuit could be in the future?
Absolutely.
What's the status right now? Are they just...
We're just going through the process.
Are you chatting? Is it friendly?
Chatting with who?
UPMC.
Me and Leslie have not talked since they canceled the last meeting.
How long ago was that?
That was in the end of November, beginning of December.
Yeah, okay.
When I told you I thought I was a little optimistic.
I know. You've had like hope in your eyes.
I had hope in my eyes, yeah. But, they have to want to do it too. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We've never closed the door.
What incentive do they have to do it? Like, other than, as you might put it, do the right thing?
I mean, the incentive to do it is that we're taking care of our city. We're taking care of a city where you got a lot of tax subsidies to be able to build your institutions. We're taking care of our city because we don't want no more bridges to fall down. We're taking care of our city because at the end of the day, our interest has to be aligned with how we make this city better.
But that's why you want it. That's not necessarily why a company would want it.
But they should want it for that reason as well.
And if they don't, how do you convince them?
Yeah, well, that's been the 1997?
1997.
That's been the conversation, and that's why we're taking it the way that we're taking it. But to think that we're going to get there overnight, there's no microwave mills in development. This is going to take some time. If this was something that could happen quickly, it would have already been executed. We're in a situation right now where we're just looking at the tools that we have, and I believe we'll get there. I still believe we'll get there. I have no doubt about that.
Well, let's bring this home, talking a little bit about your candidacy. You're in the unique position of holding the position while also vying for it. How would you describe your finances as a candidate and where you're sitting right now?
Well, just like the first time I ran, we were outraised 4-1. We're not going to raise the same type of money that my opponent did. Your
Democratic opponent.
My Democratic opponent. I don't know about all that either, right? You take $160K off of some of the biggest mega donors in this region. Now, I'm not sure whether you could say that. I'm not sure that you can't say that we're not selling out our democratic values and changing positions when you take $160,000, 20% of your funding, of your fundraising in January, or that all of a sudden you were for affordable housing, and then all of a sudden you take $280K and now you're against affordable housing. or the over 25 that you took from UPMC executives or board members, and now you're talking about you wouldn't even do a lawsuit, but you were giving me your credit, you were giving me your support when we first started down this road. So, I'm not sure about that, but what I am sure about is that for me, we're going to continue to fundraise the way we need to fundraise. Our fundraising has improved. Secondly, is we're going to stay laser focused on our agenda. Our agenda is providing affordable housing and making sure that everybody in the city has the ability to be in a home. We're also going to continue to focus on our public safety to make sure that we're continuing to reduce homicides in the city. Thirdly, we're going to continue to focus on what we got to do to stand up to Donald Trump and the impact that his federal execution will have on our region.
Have you personally rejected any donations for this campaign?
We had one that came in and we returned it.
Who from?
The one was from a mega Republican, and we returned that.
What was it? What is it about that? Like just the prospect of taking money because you have taken money from Republicans in the past.
Yeah, but there's a difference between taking money from Republicans. There's Republicans that give the both sides of the equation. There's Democrats that get the both sides of the equation. No one ever talked about that, but the mega money is different. The mega money's not doing that. The mega money is only given.
You're talking about Make America Great Again.
Make America Great Again, and the folks that's aligned with that. That's a whole different pot of money, and that's some money that, at the end of the day, has created the level of situation at the federal level that we're dealing with right now.
What about taking that money makes you uncomfortable?
Because everybody knows in this political environment, once you take the money, you owe.
Do you feel that way about other people who've given to your campaign?
Well, as long as they're in line with my values, I'm comfortable. As long as they know that I'm fighting for affordable housing, as long as they know that I'm going to continue to fight to improve the overall quality of this city, but I'm not going to take no mega money, because if I take that mega money, then I got to follow their rules and guidelines.
Mr. Mayor, you are the first one that we're talking to of the four folks that are running for mayor this cycle. You're going to have the benefit here. If you could ask any one of the other three a question, what would you like to hear them speak to?
You always, ask some good questions.
You're our incumbent. You have been the mayor. You have served the city for a long time. I want to know what you want to know from them.
Yeah, I would think it's this. I would think, one is, what's wrong with having affordable housing in every deal?
You're talking about having it for every neighborhood.
For every neighborhood.
And making it, it's because that's what separates your proposal from City Councilman Charlin's.
Yeah, I would want to know what's the problem with that. Two is, I would want to know how you take $160K and you don't owe them. And the third thing that I would want to know is, how are you going to make sure that this city is more welcoming and diverse if you've never had it in your background?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, final pitch. Why should someone vote for you come May 20th?
The reason why somebody should vote for me is because I'm someone that's always stood up for the people. I've always stood up for the people that didn't have a voice to ensure that their voice was heard. I'm also the only candidate in this race that is fighting for affordable housing, because I believe that housing is a right. And at the end of the day, the more the affordable housing that we build, the better our city's going to be. I'm also proud of our record on public safety. I'm also proud of our record on tourism and bringing the draft here. I'm also proud of our record in building housing in neighborhoods, 12 low-income tax credit deals in 2 funding cycles. That's incredible. The plan that we created for downtown, $600 million over 10 years to reimagine and reinvent our downtown corridor. Breaking ground on 8th Street with the Arts and Cultural District, to bring a new public space there, the investments that we're looking to make in Market Square and Mellon Square. Those are the reasons why I'm asking for people's vote. We want to finish what we started. The more that we get an opportunity to finish what we started, the more the city is going to grow.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Stay tuned, please, over the next month when we talk to Gainey's Democratic challenger, County Controller Corey O'Connor, as well as the Republican candidates, former police officer Tony Moreno and Lawrenceville small business owner Thomas West. We're going to be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. We'll talk to you soon. I do have one more question if you're open to it. Do you ever have occasion to take public transit yourself? Like, do you have time to do that?
Yeah, not as much right now as I used to.
You got a lot of places to be, so I see you in the back of cars getting in and out really fast.
Yeah, real fast. But let me say this, though. Like, my mom didn't have a car when I was growing up. So public transit was all we had. Most of the mamas that lived in my neighborhood, PRT was their only means of transportation.
You mean that PAT bus?
PAT bus, yeah. PAT bus, right, correct.